Network News with Alexander Caden and Brooklyn Alexander. Brooklyn?
Well, here's some good news out of Arkansas. The state is replacing two of its statues in Statuary Hall at the nation's capital. Instead of two little-known figures that visitors know absolutely nothing about, when you go there now, you will see figures of the man in black, of course. Everybody knows that's Johnny Cash, along with civil rights leader Daisy Bates. She headed up Arkansas's NAACP and also mentored the black students known as the Little Rock Five, who integrated Central High School back in 1957. Bates has a street named after her in downtown Little Rock, and I bet you didn't know that on President's Day, the state of Arkansas also recognizes Daisy Bates Day.
In Diddy or Diddy Not news, we're sure you've seen the video or heard all about Diddy physically abusing Cassie back in 2016. But it raises the question of, if the video was recorded in 2016, why is it just coming out in 2024? And who gave it to CNN? Which we'll probably never find out because I just don't see CNN giving up their source. According to the Baltimore Sun, Baltimore's former black top prosecutor Marilyn Mosby has applied for a presidential pardon ahead of sentencing on her recent perjury and mortgage fraud convictions. The city of Buffalo, New York marked the second anniversary of a racist mass shooting at Tops Supermarket that killed 10 black people with the dedication of a memorial space honoring the victims.
In entertainment news, a man was arrested after trying to break into Drake's $100 million mansion in Toronto. The attempted break-in happened one day after his security guard was shot in a drive-by shooting. The man was apprehended under the Mental Health Act.
The Supreme Court has ruled against payday lenders in favor of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, saying that lenders can't withdraw funds directly from borrowers' bank accounts. Last week, a 12-year-old black patient from the suburbs of Washington, D.C., became the first person in the world to receive a groundbreaking gene therapy treatment that may cure sickle cell disease. You've been listening to UNN Urban Network News, and you can listen to UNN on this station, and you can also watch UNN on our website at myunn.net.
Microphone check, 1, 2. What is this? It's B. Michael here with Shifting Paradigms Business. And we're live, y'all. That's right. Back in the studio. Got a live featured guest with us this evening here on Shifting Paradigms at the KUAW radio station, brought to you by the Black Family Technology Awareness Association with Baba G's on the 1 and 2, always keeping it up, holding it down with the pound here at the W. Du Bois Learning Center. Shifting Paradigms. You know, we about stimulating critical thought in order to realistically redefine our reality and reshape our narrative through dialogue with that good Kuji Chagalia. Yes, sir. We got my man A.L. Johnson in the studio today. What's up, my brother?
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir. We're going to get into some generational paradigmatics this evening. We got a lot of things to talk about. Things financial, things mentoring, things manhood, healing, mentoring. But let our audience know who A.L. Johnson is if somebody is not aware of my brother Andrew Johnson.
Absolutely. So, man, first of all, I'm a black man,
Yes, sir.
father, son, brother, and a community advocate.
Yes, sir.
I really believe that it's important for us to really start breaking down a lot of things. And so that's why I love your show. You know, that paradigm, that shift, it needs to happen in so many areas in our community. Not only financial, not only spiritual, mental, the family structure, all of it. We're broken.
Man.
We're broken. And so there's a healing that needs to take place. I've been in the life insurance business for 15 years now.
Okay.
In addition to that, I'm the president of Elevating Men, which is a mental health organization that we started back in 2020 during COVID. And our entire goal there is to help men live their best life, you know, happy, healed, healthy, and productive. Our philosophy is that stronger men build stronger communities through building stronger families. And so it's just, you know, one man at a time, one family at a time, and eventually the goal is to improve the community at large.
Man, that's a mouthful, brother, and that's a lot. You know, in saying all that, particularly as black melanated men, man, like, how have you found the desire, the discipline, the strength to stay on your path? You know what I'm saying? Like, in terms of of not knowing what your background may be, you know, in terms of having a father in your life, the mentoring that you received, the growth that you've grown through. How have you found your path?
Man, it's a very interesting journey. So I grew up in church. I went to a private school, and so the Bible was a big foundation for me. And in a lot of ways, when it comes to religion in our community, we feel that that's the end-all, be-all, right? You can take in the information, but at the same time, if you don't have someone as an example to show you, hey, this is how you live life, and you accept it, because that's a big part too. A lot of times our elders, they give us information, but we reject it, and we say, well, maybe I've got a different way or a better way. For me personally, it took for a lot of trials, a lot of tribulations, a lot of error, and yes, and reaching that point of what we call a midlife crisis, right? And so somewhere between the ages of 35 and 40, most people reach a point where they say, life isn't looking the way I expected it to. And so we all have these ideas and these visions and dreams as a young man on what life is going to look like. Oh, I'm going to be wealthy. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to have this. I'm going to have that. And when it doesn't happen that way, we begin to look at our decisions that we've made in the past, and it puts us at a crossroads, right? We say, if the decisions that I've made so far haven't got me where I want to be, if I continue to do that, what does that look another 10 to 15 years from now, right? So you reach adulthood around 20 years old, that gives you 15 years of decision making where you're at a crossroad. And you say at that point, okay, if my decisions don't correct themselves, another 15 years, I'm at the age of 50. 15 years from that, I'm at the age of 65, and we're looking at it like it's almost over. And so for me, when I hit that crossroad, I said, wait a minute, life isn't looking the way that I thought it should. Let me start looking back and seeing what I need to do differently. And the number one thing for me is really about learning how to accept the decisions that you made and the reasons that you made them, right? My father, he passed away in 2020 due to COVID. Thank you, I appreciate that. But we didn't have a close relationship. He lived out of state. Right? And so when he passed away, just like a lot of young boys that don't have their father in their life, they'll say something like, hey, if something happens to dad, I don't even care. I'm not worried about it. You know, it's all about mama. But nothing could be further from the truth. When he passed away, I completely broke down, and it was hard for me. The reason being, I realized that there were a lot of questions that I had that I would never be able to get the answer to from the person I needed the answers from. Absolutely, absolutely. And during that process, I found out from talking to one of my uncles that I didn't have a connection with, that my father didn't get anything poured into him, so he didn't have anything to pour into me. And so that's where that release and that acceptance and that letting go and understanding that, you know, our parents are human and they're going to make mistakes, but what are you going to do with the cards you were dealt? What decisions are you going to make moving forward?
Right. And I so relate to that. Estranged from my father, you know, from about 5 years on to his passing in 2002. And he was 50, you know, so I didn't even go to his funeral, man.
Wow.
I didn't even go to his funeral.
Yeah.
He was in Denver, Aurora Springs, but, you know, and that eats me up to this day.
Yeah.
It eats me up because that relationship was not there. Various reasons, you know. But he had traumas he was dealing with. And I think that's something that as men, we don't know how to address and heal from our traumas. So talk about how elevating men seeks, and you talk about mental health. Because trauma is mental.
Right.
There's a lot of mental health.
100%.
It's post-traumatic stress, whatever. But talk about how elevating men seeks to speak, at least just to speak and acknowledge what's going on with our mental health and trauma issues as men, black men particularly.
Absolutely. So there's a couple things. One, we at the legislative level, at the state level, there are some things that a lot of people just don't know, right? And so there's the point of awareness. We always talk about mental health awareness, but after the awareness sets in and a person says, okay, I actually want to seek out help, I want to go and meet with a therapist, there's a number of barriers that they encounter that make it difficult. One being the cost. And so one of the pieces of legislation that we're trying to get passed at the state level is we want the insurance companies to start paying a fair rate to the therapists. So there are companies that only want to pay $30 or $40 an hour. for therapy services that cost $100 to $200 per hour.
Right.
So when you begin that search, you'll find that most therapists only want private pay. Now, the recommendation is somewhere between 12 and 16
Right.
visits
Yeah.
just for baseline trauma.
Right.
And so in this type of economy, we know
That's
how the
tight,
economy
bro.
is.
Right.
Who has over
Right.
$2,000 to focus on their mental health? Most
Right.
people don't.
Wow.
And so you pay your insurance premiums, but then when there comes that point of you actually needing it,
Right.
it's not there for you in the way you need it to
Right.
be.
Which is already bleeding you.
It's already bleeding you. So then when you say specifically black men, let me ask you this. When you think about therapy and really talking through your issues and looking for a solution, you're generally going to want to talk to someone who you feel has a similar experience, at
Relational.
least at some baseline level.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the teaching industry where you don't see very many black men. The reason being, it's difficult for them to support a family in that occupation.
Wow.
So one thing that we're trying to do, second thing that we want to do, is we want the states to have uniform guidelines for
Wow.
therapists. What I mean by that is this. If you're a therapist and you operate in the state of Missouri, that's where your license is. If for you to operate in Kansas, there's a whole nother process you have to go through. There's more fees you have to pay. If you want to do telehealth, which became big during
Right,
COVID,
COVID.
then you have to license in all of these different states,
Oh, wow.
jump through all of those hoops, pay all of those additional fees. So I say that to say, if there aren't any black male therapists that you connect with so that you can get that healing in your state,
Right.
it's difficult for you to go outside of that box. And so we want to eliminate
Wow.
that barrier between states
good.
because telehealth exists for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, it's to broaden the base of therapists and to help more people get what they need, but it's not effective at this point.
That's real.
There are long wait times. And so I was talking to a therapist group a couple weeks ago. We had a meeting, and they said that literally someone could be suicidal. They may not be able to get seen for a week or two.
Whole.
Yeah. And so there's several issues when it comes to therapy, mental health, and specifically that for black men.
That's crucial, man. That is crucial.
So the second
Yeah.
way that we try to address it, outside of advocacy at the state level and changing laws, is actually connection. So a lot of men don't really connect with other men. Most men go solo on everything.
Right.
You know,
Right.
as long as I got
Right.
my lady, I got my family or whatever, I don't care
I'm
about
good.
no other men.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have friends. There's actually an interesting statistic that I read that actually says men live shorter lives because we don't have meaningful connections.
Wow.
Meaningful connections are one of the things that help us live longer. When you look at heart attacks, sudden heart attacks that result in death, men outpace women by a long shot. When you talk about clinical depression, men outpace women by a long shot. And so when you look at the dynamic of women and how they live their lives, every Saturday they got some kind of brunch going on, women empowerment, all these different things.
Crucial.
And so every second Saturday of the month, we have something that we call the Man Cave Prayer Breakfast.
Yes, sir.
Where we invite men to come together. We have different topics that we go over. And it's also networking. And so actually finding the other piece of your puzzle, because we all have an incomplete puzzle in our lives, goals, dreams, aspirations, hopes. And I truly believe that everything that you want out of life is going to come from another person. Right? And so if you close yourself off and you don't really make connections, you're never going to get what you want out of life. And that's where a lot of men sit.
Right. Right. You know, two things you say that really strike a chord as a man and looking at our brothers is that, you know, we bottle ourselves up so much. And that's where
Absolutely.
that stress and that, you know, early mortality rate comes from.
Yeah.
Is that we don't know how to properly have a vent to let
Right.
this stuff go, you know. And
We
then,
don't breathe.
We don't, man.
Think about it. When you see a man, just you could do it now. If you were a little angry or frustrated, pay attention to your breathing pattern,
Everything.
and the way that you're restricting your
Short
muscles.
breath.
Short breath. All of
Yep.
these things raise our blood pressure,
Yep.
and we're already at a high risk for that as black men.
Yep.
And then when you throw in the diet and the sodium and all of that
Oh,
on
my
top of it,
goodness. Right.
it's literally a recipe for
Right.
death.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so we have to learn how to breathe and
Yeah.
let go. You know, that's why I love yoga practices, breathing
Crucial.
techniques.
Yeah.
But like I said, really connecting with
Right.
other men.
Yeah.
The other thing, you know, there's an analogy that I like to use when it comes to forgiveness and letting go, so that you can elevate. I used to live in New Mexico at one point in time.
Okay.
And so there's a festival that they have every October where they release all these hot air balloons, right? And so you look at it, you know, you got the balloon, you've got the fire that shoots up, you know that it's
Yeah.
going to elevate,
Right,
but it's
right.
only going to elevate to a certain point
Yeah.
when it's tethered. And so you'll see those ropes that are connected from the
Gotta
basket
let
to the
go of that
ground.
rope, right.
You have to let go.
Yeah.
And so you're only going to go so high. And I believe that a lot of men are living in frustration because they're at their ceiling and they don't know how to get past it. And
Right.
a lot of the times it's really just letting go of something.
Holding themselves back.
Absolutely.
We do that a lot, yeah.
Them. And so whether that's forgiving your parents, whether that's forgiving, you know, past friends, past relationships, but one of the biggest ones is forgiving yourself
That's it.
for a lot of the mistakes that you
That's
made,
it.
the opportunities that you didn't take,
Yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, one thing that we want to do as black men is make sure that that next generation is taken care of. And we were talking about our fathers like that. And then you say you a father, like, what have you found to be effective as a father,
Yes.
you know, dealing with your sons and making sure that they're groomed to transition from boyhood to manhood? Because that's a huge issue for our black males.
Yes.
Even as adults, you know, a lot of adults are not men with
Right.
their mindset. How do we get to
Yeah.
a point, and what have you found successful for yourself and for your sons in helping them transition from adolescent mentality to an adult mentality?
You know, the only thing that you can really do is spend time. There's a lot that's revealed in the time spent. And what I mean by that is when you are connected to your child in a way that you're spending a lot of time with them, you see them go through those phases
You
that
do.
you went through. And so when you're not
Right.
present, you don't see it. You don't have that trigger, that mental trigger, like,
Yep.
oh, I need to teach them this, or we need to
Right.
have that conversation. But when you're connected on a day-to-day basis and you notice, you know, hey, his voice is getting a little deeper, or, you know, he's getting a little tall. Okay, now I'm seeing him, you know, cut his eye when a pretty girl walks by.
Right.
Then it triggers those important conversations. Transparency is absolutely important.
Crucial.
I believe that sometimes as parents, we can try to shelter our children to a point of not allowing them to grow, because when we talk about shelter, what is that? That's a covering, right? But if you cover a plant and it doesn't receive water and sunlight, can it really grow?
It does.
You know, and so we have to allow them to be exposed, but we want to expose them in a way that we're right there holding their hand,
Yeah,
walking with them, talking them through it.
that's good.
There's a philosophy that I go by, and it's about the 4 quarters of life. And so life expectancy is somewhere around 79 years old. We round it up to 80.
Okay.
And so just like a basketball game or a football game, that gives us 4 quarters.
Wow. Right.
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 And so first quarter, 0 to 20, that's where all the discovery happens, right? Our children are literally like little tape recorders.
Right.
And so it's very important for us to take that 0 to 20 very seriously, right? That's all on us as a parent.
Yeah, it is.
Once they move from that phase, that 20
Right.
to 40 years old,
Right.
is where we kind of let go of the reins a little
Yeah,
bit,
yeah.
and we see if they absorbed what we taught during that 0 to 20.
That's huge.
But if we don't put anything in at that point, 20 to 40 is where a lot of people end up at the
Destructive
point
years. Yeah.
of destruction.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's rich. That is real rich, man. So, you know, I could definitely relate to that with my boys and just seeing how that involvement is so important. Ingredients, though. What are the ingredients that you found to add into their life? But you talked about the transparency. Discuss like principle wise, like what principles have you found as a man that our youth need to be successful?
I will tell you, in this day and age, hard work is one that's lacking, because everything comes so easily. You know, you throw your food in the microwave, push a button,
Wow.
boom, you got hot food, right? When it comes to information, you don't have to go to the library. You open up your cell phone, you go on Google.
Yep.
Everything is so easy now, but the fact of the matter is life isn't easy,
No, it's
and
not.
especially as a man, especially as a black man.
Right.
And so beginning to teach work ethic as early as
That's
possible.
Great. That's great.
Have them do hard things. Don't shelter them so much. You know, As soon as they're able to push a lawnmower, get them out there pushing a lawnmower, let them sweat, let them feel that.
Yeah.
Because even as adult men, there's so much that we learn about ourselves through struggle. But we don't want it to be the struggle of trying to take care of a family or the struggle of bills and all those things. We want to
Right.
learn that struggle when it's controlled, whether it be through exercise, whether it be through, just working on hard projects. Reading a book at this point is challenging because they say that due to social media and the way that we interact with it, our attention spans are so short that just reading a book is difficult.
Right.
And so,
Right.
I would say challenging your child
That's
is
good.
really the best thing that you can do because they're going to learn a lot about themselves. What does their inner talk sound like to push them past that point of pain? And as a parent, you're able to observe them hit that wall and help them learn how to give themselves, good self-talk to be able to get through it.
Yes, sir. That's rich. That's rich. So you talk about hard work, that's so essential. I think this transitions to your professional background as well, dealing with life insurance, right?
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about your journey into life insurance. What was it that led you to go into that particular industry?
Oh, well, this is interesting. So I was a mortgage loan officer up until 2008. That's when the market crashed.
Yeah.
I remember sitting at my desk, I got an email that they basically changed all the guidelines overnight, right? They wanted a higher down payment. Credit score requirements went up. And the market I was dealing with wasn't conducive for me really making a living without changing some things drastically. And so I said, okay, well, what am I going to do next? I had a friend that said, hey, maybe you should get your insurance license. So I thought about it. I said, okay, I got to do something. At this time, I had a child that was a toddler. I was like, I got to make something happen. So I get my insurance license. I start working for a company. And it was just a check at first. Until I had the first death claim come through. And that death claim was for about $200,000.
Wow.
And I remember the family receiving that money and what it did for them and what it felt like
grieving.
at that time of need and what it felt like to be a part of that. And from that point, I was sold.
Wow.
I know what I'm doing is really helping families. And then the ironic thing, my father was a life insurance agent. I didn't even know. He left when I was very young, so I didn't know that's what he did.
Wow.
But when I got into it, my mother was like, you're doing the same thing your father was doing. And so it's funny how those things come full circle.
Cycles, man.
Absolutely.
And that's deep you say that because those cycles are going to be there one way or the other. It's just what we choose to instill into that next generation that they can see and learn from.
That's right.
That's huge, brother. That's huge. So our community, unfortunately, I would say we have not fully seen the viability of life insurance.
Yes.
Whereas we look at our counterparts
Yes.
and they've built generational wealth
Right.
off of life insurance from the Rothschilds, Rockefeller. We look at the wealthy families, they stack into their life insurance. So
Absolutely.
So how have you gone about educating our community about the viability of life insurance and why, we would want to invest in that, especially in these economic times of inflation?
Yes.
Like, how do we go about knowing that this is the right investment for us to make?
So for that, I need to go back a little bit because you talked about the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers.
Okay.
Just like a lot of other things when it comes to the black community, we were locked out and didn't have access for a very long time. Slave owners had life insurance policies on the slaves,
Yes,
but of
they
course
did.
slaves couldn't get life insurance. When we move into the civil rights era, there's some very interesting things that went on. So one, for a black family to purchase life insurance, they paid 3 times as much as our white counterparts to get 3 times less coverage, so a third of the coverage. They would also put limits on how much life insurance we could get. And so even for those that were well-to-do and they could get a life insurance policy, it was enough for funeral expenses. Right. And so that's why even to this day, you hear a lot of us say, I just need a little money for a funeral. I'm not worried about anything beyond that because that's what we've been conditioned towards. once we get past the civil rights area, they removed all of those barriers, but the mindset didn't change.
Wow.
Just like many
That's
other
good.
things, now they say, hey, you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Technically, you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps. However, we're still caged mentally. And so when we say, why don't black people purchase life insurance at the rates of our counterparts or in the amounts of our counterparts, it's because we haven't seen it play out. And so when you look at, say, J.C. Nichols, we're here in Kansas City, you look at the plaza
Right.
and all
Right.
those areas. Well, he had covenants with all of his properties that said, okay, you can purchase this home, not black people, white people, you
Right.
can purchase this home as long as you don't sell it to a black family.
Covenants.
And so the areas that appreciated in a major way, we couldn't get in there.
Right.
And so then when you look at the wealth gap and how was that really exacerbated over time, well, you look, they purchase a home, theirs is in an appreciating area, ours is at one that doesn't really appreciate.
Right.
It's either depreciating or staying flat. When grandpa dies in our family, we got enough money to take care of a funeral. When
That's
grandpa
it.
dies in their family, they have enough money to purchase real estate,
Wow.
stocks,
Right.
and buy businesses.
Yep.
Right. And so one thing that we talk about when it comes to this whole racism thing is that, racism is over with. You kind of hear that narrative. And although it may be declining, what we do have to realize is that it wasn't that long ago.
Right.
Civil rights was in the 60s. It's just 2024. And so
Right.
those same people that were standing in line and didn't want the kids to go into the integrated schools,
Yep.
some of those people are still living.
Very much
right.
so.
And so the mindset hasn't left yet. But one thing I'm encouraged about is this younger generation I see on social media that we're talking about it now. We're having the conversation. I am increasingly, like I said, I've been doing this for 15 years. I would say over the last 3 to 4 years, I've had more people under the age of 40 giving me phone calls, and they're asking the questions about, like, how
Crucial.
can I build wealth with this? How can I set a trust
Yes.
up for my family? How can I make sure they're
Wow.
okay? And so while it is true that we aren't where we should be, I'm very much encouraged in the fact that we're starting to open our eyes and take action.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the policies, man, that you actually have available through your agency.
Yes, sir.
Just so our listeners are more aware, if they're not aware, just to, definitely plant a seed for those who may not have that insight in terms of what life insurance policies are out there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
can you go over some of the different policies that you have at your disposal?
Definitely. So first and foremost, I'm a broker, which is important. That
Okay.
means that I represent multiple companies because all companies don't sell the same type of policies,
Okay.
and they have different qualifications from a health perspective. And so being a broker allows me to shop around and make sure that you're getting a good value for your family. When we talk about types of policies, there's 3 main types. You have term, whole life, and universal life.
Okay.
Just a really quick breakdown. The way that I passed the test and just, memory, term terminates.
Right.
So it's a temporary policy for a
Okay.
specific amount of time, whether it be 10, 15, 20, or 30 years. And so being that it's a temporary policy, it should be purchased for temporary needs. What's a temporary need? That may be that you have a 30-year mortgage, so you get a 30-year term to cover that. You may have small children that you're raising, so you want enough, just to say that if something happened while they're young, somebody
Right.
can take care of them or possibly
Right.
even pay for college.
Right.
On the flip side, you have whole life, which is exactly how it sounds. It lasts your entire life, no matter how long you live. And it also builds a cash value. And so when people talk about cash value, generally, they're talking about a whole life insurance policy. So as you
Right.
pay those premiums over the years, there's an account that builds up that you can actually borrow from. Now, people will say, well, hey, you're borrowing your own money, which is true to an extent.
Right.
But inside of the policy, it does gain interest. And this is actually a loophole that the wealthy use, which is they will fund a whole life policy. And
Right.
whenever you take out a loan, right, say if you go take out a consumer loan from the bank, that doesn't count as income. And so when you have money that builds up inside of a life insurance policy, you can systematically take loans out,
Right.
including the interest, and that doesn't count against your income. So it's essentially tax-free.
I was about to say it's tax
It's
tax free as well. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And then there's what's called universal life, which has a few variations, index universal life, guaranteed universal life. But essentially, the difference between that and whole life is the way it generates the cash value. And so whole life is done through bonds that the insurance company purchases. So
Okay.
there's a guaranteed rate. You know exactly what it's going to do.
Yeah.
On the universal life side, it's through the stock market. And so it's usually tracked by an indice like the S&P 500.
Right, right.
When the stock market goes up, it increases the value inside of your policy. But the beautiful thing is, if it's indexed, that means that when the market goes down,
It
you just get a
stays right
zero
there.
credit.
Yeah,
You don't go
yeah,
negative. And so those are the three main types.
That's good.
But one
That's
thing that
good.
I really want to encourage the community to do, outside of just getting life insurance, which is important, whatever policy makes sense and fits for you, insure these young people, right? Because when we talk about life insurance, it's always grandma and grandpa because we're like, okay, they're the
Right.
closest to that time.
Right.
But when we look at the crime rates, the murder rate in Kansas City, we're almost on pace for another record year. And so think of how many young men in their 20s
Right.
have lost their lives and they're leaving children on the grandparents with no money to care for them.
Right.
Life insurance pricing is based off of your age and your health at the time that you get it. And so the younger you are, the healthier you are, the more
less
coverage you can get
expensive, right.
for a low amount of
Yep.
money. I quoted a gentleman earlier today. $100,000 policy was like less than $30 a month.
Wow.
Right. And so when we just really think about it and look at how it plays out, he doesn't have insurance. We're doing a GoFundMe to try to come up with
Right.
$10,000
I was going to bring that up.
to get the,
I was
the
gonna
funeral
bring that up.
home.
Right, alone.
When we could have paid $20 or $30 a month and the family receive a six-figure check that can help
Right.
take care of those children. And
Yeah.
so we just really got to shift our mindset. We're the biggest consumers in the world, right?
Right.
You know, and
the
so we look
largest
at
buying power in the world.
absolutely.
Yep.
But what are we using it on?
Yeah, that's the key. That's the
Yeah.
key. So on that note, man, investment versus just consumption, right? How have you, I'm sure you shifted your mindset as well some time ago to go from being a consumer to an investor. And what's the significance of that? Why should we look to now invest? Because, you know, sometimes we think of that money as like, well, I ain't got it. You know what I'm saying? Like but we're missing out on how that money's working for us.
Yeah.
So how do we get to shift the mindset of our people to go from consuming to investing?
There's a couple things. One, education, always. You know, what you don't know always hurts you, right? The second part of it, I believe there's this syndrome, and I ain't got a name for it yet, but I'm
Okay.
gonna come up with one.
Okay.
But have you ever seen someone get their income tax?
Right.
And what they generally do with it is they spend it on everything that they wanted that they
Yep.
couldn't get throughout the year.
Right.
I believe
Give
they
it
do
right
that.
back.
Give it right back. Same thing that happened with the stimulus.
Yeah.
You know, people came into all kinds of money that they had never touched before, but
Yeah.
where did they end up? I did an interview with one of the CEOs of BMO Harris Bank.
Okay.
She said when they were giving out those PPP loans and all of that, the same accounts that the money went into, of course, they're able to see where the money goes out. They weren't spending it on, you know, moving their business forward or taking care of it. They were going and leasing expensive cars and, you know, all of these things to
Tricking.
appear
Right.
appear
Right.
rich
Wealthy.
or wealthy,
Yeah.
right? And so
Right.
I believe all of that comes back down to self-esteem.
That's big.
And so the first way
big.
for you to be able to shift from a consumer to an investor is to be okay with yourself as you are, right? I don't necessarily need a Rolex to prove my worth. I don't need a Benz to prove my worth. I'm enough already,
Right.
Right. And so I would say self-esteem is step one. The second part is belief. And so when that person gets that income tax, they buy everything that they wanted. It's because they don't believe they won't have the opportunity otherwise. You see what I mean?
Right,
And so it's
right,
like,
right.
I don't know if I'm ever going to touch another $5,000 to $10,000 check. So let me
Right.
get all that I can right now. And so
Instant
there's a
gratification.
there's a lack of belief.
Yeah.
You know. And that was the next thing I was going to say, delayed gratification. You can always do it's one thing to spend your last to get something that you want.
Right.
It's another thing to go ahead and delay that gratification, build up a little more, buy what you want, and still have something left. It took me forever to understand that, you know, we have these sayings, and it's like you hear it, but
Yeah.
you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Okay. Yeah.
You can't have your money and spend it too. Once you spend
Right.
it, it's gone.
It's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
That's powerful.
yeah, those are the things. And then
That's
just
good.
educating yourself on the the power of interest. You know, if you actually sit down and play around with you know, interest on a calculator, or you don't even have to know the calculations. Go on Google and say, you know, what would it look like if I invested this at this percentage for this long, and see how the money grows, and allow that to encourage you.
Yeah, that's life changing too. You know, going from that instant to delayed gratification mindset is huge, because I mean, we're just in a society now, particularly with our culture, our music that we hear, is just promoting the right now type of lifestyle.
Yeah, just think about this. You lived all year, right, without your income tax. So that means that you can continue to pay your bills and take care of everything, right? Statistically, once a person retires, the average in America is somewhere between $170,000 to $220,000 in someone's 401k, right? The average person's income tax, if they were to take that and invest it just for the time that their child, you know, that tax credit from 1 to 18, and were to let that sit, their child would be a millionaire.
Wow.
$1 million, right?
Easy.
And so, you know, it's just a matter of, one, knowledge, two, you know, self-esteem, you know, and then that delayed gratification.
Discipline, man.
Discipline.
Financially disciplined. And that's something that, you know, I know for myself, I'm definitely getting much more disciplined financially, because it's a crucial matter, man. And just to change that mindset, to go from just being more frivolous with money to now being more shrewd.
Well, you start off small, you know. I used to play basketball. That was my thing. And so you don't start off teaching a child how to shoot three-pointers or from the half court. You teach them a layup, you know. And so instead of trying to, you know, take this big, okay, I'm going to start saving, you know, 15, 20% of my check. How about, you know, one thing that I did starting off was, anytime I would spend money, I would take the difference, round it up to 100. So say if I went to the grocery store and I spent $85, okay, well, I'm gonna take 15 and I'm gonna put it over here.
That's well.
Just
like
a start.
Right.
And then as you start seeing that those finances build up, then you have the confidence to say, okay, let me put a little more. Let me put a little more to the side. I'm still able to pay my bills. I'm still able to do what I want to do. Let me put a little more to the side.
That's crucial, man. Because I think, you know, going from survival mode to, like, you know, being able to live. Because we're still in that survival mode a lot. A lot of our people are still stuck.
We're striving instead of thriving.
Survival, exactly. Like, let me just stay afloat, you know, living check to check. And that's stress. You know, that goes back to the mental health issue, you know what I'm saying? And just really finding ways to really alleviate all that stress that we have. And it's all about positioning, preparation, you know, and getting ourselves in a place where we can function. And you know what's so interesting, though, because the real fusion of all this is the spiritual dynamic, right? We think of the mentoring. We talked about that early, right? Then you think about the life insurance and the financial literacy that we need. But that all translates into spiritual consciousness, the belief you talk about. So from your standpoint, speak of how this all has a spiritual impetus. You know what I'm saying? What is the spiritual impetus behind having, you know, the right mindset? What is the spiritual impetus behind dealing with your finances in a mature and financially literate way, right? And how do we go about transforming ourselves individually and our community with that spiritual thrust that can really propel us into a place of better existence as a people?
Well, I believe that your input equals your output. What goes in is what's going to come out. When we look at our communities and we see dilapidated buildings and rundown neighborhoods, that's a reflection in many cases of what's going on inside of the people within that community. And so really focusing on the input. You spoke of the music being very suggestive in a detrimental way. Something as simple as paying attention to the music that you listen to and the frequencies that you allow to enter your mind is huge. Turning off the TV and picking up a book, that's huge. And you say spiritual, what I liken spiritual to in this sense, in this aspect, is your self-talk. But where does your self-talk come from? It comes from what you put into yourself. There was a point that I hit where, I mean, I went through some extreme depression. However, prior to that extreme depression, I had went through a number of years of really fortifying my mind with the right information, the right books, turning on YouTube versus the radio and listening to maybe a podcast that's kind of pouring into me. So when I actually hit that rock bottom, I had some thoughts that were arising that were able to lift me back up versus keeping me held down. And so for us to really, raise our spiritual vibration, it's the input down to information, but also our health. Our health, like people don't recognize it, but like the food you eat, the drinks that you ingest, all of those things play into your psyche, right? And so you have people that are running around with extreme anxiety. Maybe that's because your blood pressure is high, your blood sugar is high, all of these different things. Not intaking enough water, all of those things really end up playing into other areas of life that you wouldn't think they do, but they do.
Truly so. That's all mindset. And that buffer that you say that you build up from the information that you put in is so important, because if you don't have anything to resist, right, that depression, because I experienced that early in my life as well, my late teens, and I really had nothing at that time though, but the spirit was tugging me to come into that particular way of life, and it was so important for me to really start to dig deep into meaning, because that's what I didn't have. I lacked meaning. Right. I was just living frivolously, like how I would spend my money, just whatever. You know what I'm saying? Not understanding the residue that's building up. Right. And the detriments that I'm experiencing, and how I'm not valuing people. Right. But just the material aspects of it. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's something in a capitalist society, we struggle with that, to really understand how to value humanity and ourselves. And I think that was something you really mentioned in terms of the self-esteem and the perspective of who we are, and understand that we are valuable and priceless, in fact. That's right. Which can counter all of the death and the destruction that we're seeing, and the music that is being put out, because we can hold ourselves to a standard that won't allow for this stuff to penetrate. So
there's a book I encourage everyone to read it. It's called Outwitting the Devil.
I've heard
Napoleon Hill that wrote Think and Grow Rich, same author. In this book, he's essentially having a conversation with the devil. So he has him trapped in this realm where he can't lie. And so he's got the devil pinned. He has to tell the truth. And so what he does is he begins to ask him, how does he trap men and prevent them from living the life that they want to live? And he goes through drugs, he goes through sex, alcohol, he goes through all of these different things, and he asks him specifically. But one thing that the devil ultimately said is that I can't touch someone who has strong enough belief in themselves and are focused. A lot of us aren't focused. We're drifting. Right? And so we wake up every day, we don't have a plan. We just go to work, we come home, we go through this routine, right? And we don't notice that we're actually living in a fog. And until you understand that and really intentionally clear that fog so that you can see clearly, now you can develop a plan. Right. A lot of people that I talk to, especially through Elevating Men, they'll say, well, man, I've written down my goals. I've even written down the steps to get to where I want to be. So most of us inherently know exactly what we need to do. Right. If you were trying to lose weight, okay, let me do some push away from the table. Right. Let me eat more vegetables, cut back on the carbs. We know that. Right. If you was trying to build muscle, go to the gym, lift weights. We know that. But when it comes down to taking action, it's the fog that stops us from doing that. And so it's about clearing that fog.
That's crazy. Yeah. And that mind fog is the patterns. I just think of like ants and drones. You know what I'm saying? We just are just instinctual. It becomes instinctual as opposed to really intentional.
Right.
That's powerful.
Yeah. I mean, all of these things are designed that way. When you go back to Hitler's regime and the Nazis and Hitler, that whole situation there, he had what he called the Minister of Propaganda.
Goebbels.
Exactly.
Joseph Goebbels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they did this science and they did the research that says, okay, if we can get these people watching TV, that flickering light actually allows the message to go straight to the subconscious and it bypasses the conscious mind. And so they're literally putting these things in our brain and we're like,
Don't
am I acting like this? Why am I reacting? And
Yeah.
we don't get it.
Yeah.
And so once you're armed with that information,
Ooh-wee.
now you can say, okay, wait a minute, I'm blocking
Ooh-wee.
that. I'm not listening to
Yeah.
that. You know, I'm
Yeah.
going to put this in.
Right.
Then
You know, wow, the power of suggestion is incredibly powerful.
marketing.
Edward Bernays, that was his name. Edward Bernays, the father of marketing.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yeah. And then the brother that owned Jet Magazine,
Was
his
it
name?
Johnson, wasn't it?
Johnson.
Bob Johnson?
Bob Johnson. How to Sell the Negro. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but there was a video and it talked about
That was back in the day too, wasn't it? That was like in the
way back
'60s,
in
right?
the '60s, yeah. You know,
Okay.
so I love research.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
But I watched that, you know, and it said, well, how do you get a black man to purchase something? So they had one come into the store. There were 2 ties, right? Same exact tie, but one cost more. Which one did he go for?
More
The one that
expensive.
costs more.
Yep.
Why?
Quality,
Because it
he
makes you
thinks
feel. Not even quality.
Wow, right.
Not even. It was the same
Wow.
tie.
Wow.
But one costs more, so it's
I see what you're
perception.
saying. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
We're always
brand names and
Yeah,
stuff.
brand names and all that. Like you know, Jordan shoes, we'll spend $200 for it, and at this point, I think everybody knows they cost like $30 if that.
Right.
You know, to
Right.
manufacture. And so, what's the value of that? Is it because it's Jordan's name on it, or is it because you believe that when you go and step out, you're going to get a little bit more respect? Right. So as a black
Image.
yeah,
No
image.
substance.
So as a black man, if you feel like you're going out, you're not respected at work, right? You walk up and down the street, you feel like you aren't respected. The number one thing you want to do, or the easiest path to respect, is let me put on a brand, right? And so now you've overspent. Nobody sees your savings that you're putting away. So there's like, well, can't nobody respect that, right? And so it's a vicious cycle that causes us to spend our money the wrong way, spend our time the wrong way. And do a lot of things to our own detriment.
I can't help but think of brands of what they did to our ancestors on the plantation. They branded us with the
That's
name
right.
of the plantation owner. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that mindset, that enslaved mindset to material, and that's what we're slaves to now. We're slaves to materialists. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
To material, and that's something that we gotta definitely like educate ourselves about to understand how to put that in its right place.
Look, I got a beautiful chocolate baby girl, right? Love her to death. And at one point, she had came home. She had got made fun of because of her skin. Oh, darky, you darky, this and that.
Wow.
And I showed her that melanin is one of the most valuable substances on
chemical.
the planet. Melanin is more valuable than gold, right? And so you have to know yourself.
Yeah.
You have to know your history. You have to know some of these things to say that me being here is enough, right? That's where that self-esteem comes from. And so we really have to instill that into the next generation that you don't need no Jordans, right? To get respect. Use your mind, use your intellect, use your work ethic. You know, use all these things, and it's going to take you a lot further.
Yeah. You know, you say that melanin is about $445 a gram on the market.
Yeah.
A gram.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's
and an
incredible.
ounce of gold right now is about 2,500 or somewhere in there. And so, we're valuable in and of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and that's why we're disappearing so much, because they're taking
That's
that on
a
the
whole
market and
nother-
using.
that's
That's
a
a whole
whole
different
nother
story. It
conversation.
really is. It
Yeah,
really is.
But it's real.
And this is something that, you know, as a people that we got to definitely recognize as our value, going back to that, you know, and it's not just because of anything other than us being, you know, human and really understanding that we derive from the spiritual reality of our Creator. He planted that spirit within us, right?
Yes.
And that image and that likeness that we are intended to bear is what makes us valuable.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
just getting back to that is something that's the journey that we all have to embark.
Yeah.
You know, so I definitely want to encourage all my listeners to understand the spiritual journey that we have to embark on first and foremost, you know, because it says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and all its righteousness.
That's right.
Everything else shall be added unto you, man. No. So any closing thoughts that you want to share with our listeners today? Talk about the next Man Cave meeting. When is that going to take place? And anything else you want to share?
Thank you. The next Man Cave breakfast is going to be June 8th. It's at the Oasis Church in Raytown, Missouri. It is 100% free of charge. We don't want your money. We just want you. It's a great opportunity to fellowship and network with other brothers who are trying to uplift themselves and elevate, right? If you want to elevate, the best thing you can do is get around other people that are trying to elevate as well. Non-toxic environments where we're actually building each other up versus tearing each other down. And so to RSVP for that, you can find the Elevating Men Facebook page. Just go to Facebook, type in Elevating Men. You can find us there. We're also on TikTok. We're on YouTube. I do encourage you to check out our YouTube channel because we have some of our panel discussions, which are gold. So we always have a panel of brothers that come on, and we tackle various topics from fatherhood to financial literacy and everything in between.
Yeah.
And so, check out Elevating Men. Our website is elevatingmen.org. You can go there and support us. We are looking for donations because one of our main functions right now is that we subsidize the cost of therapy for men who need it, starting at age 16.
Huge. That's huge.
Because at 16, you can go and get a job.
Right.
You're
Stresses
a man.
will increase.
Exactly. Exactly. And so for anyone who needs therapy, elevatingmen.org, we do help subsidize the cost of that. In addition to that, I want you to visit aljohnsonlifeinsurance.com. That's my life insurance website. Protect your family. Protect your family. Death is inevitable. It's not something that we want to talk about.
Right.
But none of us are going to live forever on this earth. Right. And there's a cost associated with death no matter what. And so you can take care of that. Very simple. I tell everybody $30 in 30 minutes can go a long way when it comes to protecting your family. And so take out that time, set aside a few dollars, and let's stop letting death not just be the tragedy of us losing a loved one. Let's stop, because it's more than that now.
Right.
Like, people are passing away. We have that tragedy. Then people are losing their homes. We have people, can't take care of the children properly, and it's unnecessary.
It really is.
We have the money. We just need to take the time to take care of business. So,
reposition, restructure, right? Pivot differently.
Absolutely.
Those are all things that we have to do, and we have that in our community as well. And that's the beautiful thing, is that we have examples that we can follow, that we can look to as mentors, So get yourself a mentor as well if you don't have one, particularly our younger brothers, because there's people out here that want to see you succeed and want to see you prosper and want to see you live. You know what I'm saying? So we just got to change the paradigm, shift that paradigm so we can get to a place where we can actually, thrive as a people. Man, I want to thank you for being here today, my brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yes,
I enjoyed
sir.
it.
This is good. It's a great conversation. Thank you. Thank you. And I definitely want to thank KUAW for always having this platform available for the community. You can check out, I got a new book out, The Kingdom Within, as well. Just released that April 1st, so you can go to Amazon to get that. You can also cash at me directly and I'll get it out to you. The Kingdom Within, exploring Torah-based governance and prophetic messianic redemption, because this is what Shifting Paradigms ultimately is promoting, the kingdom of our Father and our King in heaven, on earth. And that's what we really need to be pursuing, bringing all these dynamics into it. Understand that we have a financial responsibility. When you listen to the parables of the Messiah, most of the parables, in fact, were relative to economics. Right. And so we have to understand the power of cooperative economics and collective work and responsibility, but just the importance of humanity. You know what I'm saying? This is where we definitely have to get back to and promote light, promote love. I had the fortune of, I won't say it's a fortune, but the opportunity to provide a eulogy for a family of a man that passed, 37 years old, complications from some challenges that he had faced earlier, 12 years earlier in his life. But, they told me of the 13-year-old that got murdered not too long ago that had their services at the Lawrence A. Jones Funeral Home. And these are things that we can prevent. These are things that we can actually shift and change. And it takes every individual to play their part to do that. And
I want to give you your flowers while I'm here. Just the way that we met is an indication of the type of man and father that you are. We met at an event, where boys were learning how to fish and how to shoot, which honestly is lost in our community. A lot of boys
Right.
don't know anything about hunting, fishing, planning, any of the basic survival skills. And I saw you there with your family, man,
Yes, sir.
and you know, I can tell that you're doing the right thing. And on top of that, you're leaving a legacy with your book, with your YouTube channel, with your radio show, everything that you're doing. And so I just wanted to give you your flowers
Man,
because a
thank
lot of
you.
people talk about it,
Yeah.
but you're doing it.
I appreciate that.
So I
my
wanna
brother.
commend you for that.
All praises to the Most High, man. No doubt. And same to you, my guy.
Yes, sir.
And we just got to keep pushing, brother.
Keep
You know what I'm
pushing.
saying? Every
That's
day.
it. Right,
Yes, sir.
right,
That's
right.
beautiful.
It don't
That's
stop.
beautiful. Nah, can't stop. Man, I want to thank my listeners for tuning in today. We will be back in a couple weeks, most high willing. I have another guest feature, a couple guest features lined up, so we'll make this happen. And then I'm actually going to be repivoting this and doing some different things with shifting paradigms. So I'm excited about the opportunity coming up. But thanks again for tuning in. This is B. Michael with Shifting Paradigms with our feature A.L. Johnson. Check him out to his website. Get your life insurance right with my brother here as well, and we can keep it moving. But I want to thank Baba G for always holding it up, keeping it down. This is B. Michael with Shifting Paradigms signing off. Peace and power. Shalom and shalom.